Sonic, the heart of your system.
As promised, hi and welcome to a follow-up video to the Radeon 7 PCI Express adapter video. Basically, in one of the previous videos, we were building this adapter, which is connecting 3 PCI Express slots into 2 times 8-pin PCI Express power adapters. So means like we're powering the Radeon 7 currently just from the PCI Express slots, no additional 8-pin connectors coming from the PSU, which then is powered by the 4-pin Molex from down here and also the 24-pin connector. In the previous video, I thought that this would be maybe on the limit or that it would work. And a lot of you were kind of disappointed that nothing went up in fire, that nothing burned. And I was asked to repeat this experiment and to remove the 4-pin connector as I promised in the previous video. That's what we will do today. We will remove the 4-pin Molex, see what happens to the 24-pin connector right here on the back. Also, I think this will work, probably it will survive. I think if that works, we will also remove those tiny power adapters one by one. What I did for that is I basically connected all the ground cables right here in between and connected all the 12-volt cables in between here. That was necessary to have a connection between all of the wires of the 8-pin connectors. Otherwise it could be that one of the 8-pin connectors doesn't have ground or 12-volt and therefore the Radeon 7 would not power up, simply because they're not connected, not because there is not enough current. For that I obviously had to solder once more. And yeah, we can talk about this solder thing for a minute. A lot of people are still hating on the soldering equipment, which I still find funny. It's really not necessary to have 500 euro soldering equipment just to solder cables. You can do that with a 5 euro soldering iron. There's nothing special required to that. It's just a pure waste of money. If you're getting a soldering station for like 400-500 euro just to solder tiny cables to a PCB, that's a complete waste of money, especially for a video like this. Yeah, that's Mary. That's why I will just stick to those soldering irons. It's from ERSA, made in Germany. Soldering iron with 75 watt. It's adjustable in temperature down here, which is something that's quite useful if you need it. Typically I don't need it, I just solder on the highest power because all the components I'm soldering, they're not really temperature sensitive. A cable or a small PCB like that, if you only touch it with the soldering iron for like a second, nothing really happens. That's why I stick to my soldering equipment. Talking about the soldering tip, always use it as big as possible and as tiny as necessary. That's the golden rule of thumb for soldering. A lot of people are always saying, why are you using such big tips? Why are you not using a very tiny tip? Simply because it's not necessary. Soldering with a bigger tip is always easier because you have a lot more heat stored in a bigger tip than in a smaller tip. That's why if you can use a bigger tip, you should always do it. Only use a very tiny one if it's really necessary. With this current clamp, we will be able to measure the current of the 12-volt and also of ground. Before we do that, we will simply start Thermic to put some load to the VGA. So with the current clamp, we can check 12-volt. Current power draw is 23 amps. We have 23 amps and now we will remove the Molex connector. After removing the 4-pin Molex, I also attached a thermocouple inside the connector of the 24-pin at the location of 12-volt, which is currently 41 degrees Celsius, which is really not bad. The cable is still fine. The cable is less than that. The connection or the point of connection inside the 24-pin connector is surely the hottest point. Pushing this down onto the metal part should give us the highest temperature. Still, this looks kind of fine. Yeah. The card is sometimes running into the temperature and also power limit. That's why the current is fluctuating a little bit to like 20-22 amps. Don't get me wrong, that's just for science. We're just testing what happens. Don't repeat this at home. Don't do that at home because you know you don't want to have cables with a temperature of 77 degrees Celsius inside your system. If anything starts to burn, that would not end well. So don't repeat it at home. We're just trying it for the sake of science. 78 degrees, that's not good. It's a bit too much. After 10 minutes, still maximum 86 degrees Celsius on the 24-pin connector. 86 degrees Celsius obviously is really, really much. Long term, it's probably not going to be good. You know, once the resistance or once the contact gets worse, the resistance becomes higher, then also your connection temperature will be higher, the point of connection of your connector. Therefore, over time, it could be that the temperature increases so much that your cables, eventually, maybe your insulation gets too warm and melts, and yeah, just don't do it. We will now remove the first PCB. Technically, nothing should happen except for that the connections will get a lot warmer. The current should stay the same. We'll see. Fail. When you touch you put your finger inside the fan. Yeah. Oh well, casualties, you know. At least the system is still running. 24-pin connector cooled down a little bit. I attached the temperature probe to the bottom PCB, which is reading 51 degrees Celsius right now, which is still fine. So yeah, it's time to remove the second PCB. Still about 20 amps pulling. Temperature is drastically increasing. This means that we're currently pulling 20 amps over this tiny cable, just over this 12-volt cable right here. The temperature feels quite warm, feels like it's 50-60 degrees Celsius. Connection temperature is 81, increasing. It's still running, 104 degrees Celsius connector temperature right here, but only because I'm blocking the airflow of the card with my hand. If I remove it, you can see it instantly decreases because of the airflow of the card. The additional airflow of the card is certainly helping to cool down this small piece. Even though the airflow is really, really hot from the Radeon 7, it still helps. Cable temperature, I would assume something about 60 degrees Celsius, because you can just touch it. It's on the edge to touch it. You cannot touch it more than, I think, yeah, 5 seconds is pretty much the maximum you can hold it in your hand. So it should be just about 60 degrees Celsius right now. I know you wanted to see the world burn. I also wanted to see this burn, but it doesn't burn. Thermark has been running for almost 1 hour right now. It's still fine. There's like 95 degrees Celsius on the connector. We're currently running a Radeon 7 on one cable. Actually two. Well, one 12-volt, one ground. That's it. Instead of 16, 2 times 8. And it's still running. And we're only using two 12-volt on the PCI Express slot. And well, a bit more ground, but yeah, we're pulling like 230 watts over this tiny PCB out of this slot on the bottom, while people are saying that, oh my god, you're pulling 85 watt of your PCI Express slot, things are going to burn. We're pulling over 200 watt here and nothing is burning. Yeah. The only thing we managed to destroy in this video is my thumb when I touched the fan of the Radeon 7. I would say that's a great achievement. And I would say that's a good point to end this video, because nothing happens. That's really disappointing. It's also funny that we can power a Radeon 7 from one cable, but yeah. You know, people are always saying that I destroy so many things, especially at work. I have the reputation of destroying everything, but when I'm trying, there's no way I can destroy anything. So much for now. See you soon.